Okay, you ready? I don't know if I am. Let's see if I have a voice this morning. Actually, not too bad. I was surprised. I thought maybe I've been coughing all night, had some NyQuil, feel a little wiped out, but yeah. All right, sounds pretty good. October 7th, it's Monday. It's 7:50 in the morning, and time to check out the weather mic and the weather through next weekend. Let's do that. So we have big low Hudson's Bay, trailing cold front through Maine, New Hampshire. That's where our showers are this morning. Even Connecticut looks like a little bit of rain. Then the Pacific Northwest, mainly in Canada, British Columbia. Nice system moving on shore there. And just off screen to the south is Hurricane Milton, heading towards Florida as a major hurricane soon. And we do have the particulars on Milton right after we check out today's hazards, which include some particulars on Milton. So for the Southwest, it's still hot. Excessive heat warnings continue. I don't know, what has it been, 2 weeks straight? Amazing. For Arizona into Southern California and along the California coast. If you watched football yesterday, you saw San Francisco playing in the upper 90s in San Francisco Bay Area, which is just kind of crazy. Heat advisories continued there today. Now, we had heat advisories yesterday through the central valleys of California, and those have been canceled, so maybe not quite as hot today. That's good. Meanwhile, Milton making its way towards Florida, and so we have hurricane watches up for much of the state, tropical storm watches up for most of the rest of the coast of the state and inland, and then even some flood watches too. And then you see the light green little squiggles. Those are flood warnings for rivers in the southeast through the mid-Atlantic. All right, here's what's going on with Milton. This is the latest advisory 52 minutes ago. We had Hurricane Milton as a Category 2 with sustained winds of 125 miles an hour, moving to the east-southeast at 8 miles an hour. So major hurricane status. It's expected to strengthen, winds to 145, maybe 150 by tomorrow, and then weakening some before it hits the coast. This is the best forecast going right now. We'll see how it works out. So winds going up to maybe 145 and then dropping down to 115, 120 once it makes landfall is the current forecast. So maybe about as strong as it is now when it hits Florida. Anyway, it's going to be devastating for a couple of reasons, and this is one of them. The surge across, Tampa Bay. So if Milton hits where it's expected to, right, the center of the cone, let's go back to that, then it's going to go right across Tampa Bay and into Tampa itself, the city of Tampa. And so the storm surge there is just going to be massive. And we're talking about a major metropolitan area being hit by a Category 2, 3 hurricane. So not good. And the storm surge is going to be quite severe, up to 12 feet for many parts of the central Florida Gulf Coast. And then as we get inland and the rest of the state, flooding concerns are already a concern because the rain has been heavy and will continue to be heavy. So we're talking up to a foot of rain in some places with Hurricane Milton. Also on Wednesday, and maybe even tomorrow, we'll start seeing the outer bands, probably Wednesday, start seeing the outer bands affect the state, and that'll spin up some tornadoes too. So we're going to have some severe weather concerns on top of everything else. All right, here's today's surface, and that low that I showed you earlier up in Hudson's Bay, there's a surface low along that cold front or the occluded front that's there just north of New York State. Those are your showers for New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, showers down in Connecticut, and then heavy rain for Florida, flooding possible here, and then a little bit of rain up there in the Pacific Northwest. That front is all the way through the plains right now, and I forgot to mention this. We've been it's been pretty warm here. Like Saturday was 91 or something. Right now, outside, it's 34 degrees, and there's frost on my car. Just beautiful thing. You know what that means? It means a lot of dead flies. So it's really good. Temperature did get down to 32 briefly at the Harlan Airport, which oddly enough, is halfway between Harlan and the county south of us, Pottawatomie County. So the airport's actually about 6 miles south of town, but it did get down to freezing there. All right, temperature anomalies for today. We're going to be pretty close to average here in Iowa, just a couple few degrees above, with a high near 70 here in western Iowa. A little cooler than average as you get into Tennessee, Kentucky, up into the Midwest, Pennsylvania, New York State, maybe 5 degrees below average, really nice. With the rain in Florida, about 10 degrees below average for some places. The rest of the country warm, if not hot. And California, the big winter, temperature is still 15, 20 degrees above average here. And that translates to highs about 99 Sacramento, 100 Bakersfield, still 107 Phoenix, 103 Tucson, even 80s for the Willamette Valley of Oregon. So just warm temperatures west. Even the plains, again, we should be in the 60s this time of year. We're approaching 80 for parts of South Dakota, 70s in Iowa and Missouri, 80s in Oklahoma, although I think temperatures more like 70s there, not 60s, but still 80s. 80s and 90s for Texas into Louisiana. A lot of 80s for the southeast, and then cooling off as you go up the coast. But, still a lot of 70s for the Midwest, dropping into the 60s, Pennsylvania, New York State, and even some 50s up in Maine. Lows tomorrow morning, a little warmer. We won't hit freezing here in western Iowa, it doesn't look like. Looks like we'll be in the 40s. The freezing temperatures will be up there in the Arrowhead of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, UP of Michigan, scattered throughout Wisconsin too. So, you start getting into the deeper greens before it turns blue, and those are still 30s. So widespread 40s, low 40s even, Midwest into the Northeast, Northern Plains into Montana. Of course, 30s in the Rockies and with elevation, 30s for parts of eastern Oregon. And then as you head south, the Southwest starting the day in the 70s. 50s and 60s for Texas, 50s and 60s for Louisiana, 50s for Mississippi, except right along the Gulf Coast, 60s for Alabama to start the day. Surface for tomorrow. Here comes Milton, kind of hugging the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. So the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico is going to get some heavy rain from Milton and probably get lashed with some of those tropical force winds. The core storm itself will stay in the Gulf and it will continue to strengthen. So, we could get Category 4, maybe even 5 status by this time tomorrow. And heavy rain for Florida continues. And then Pacific Northwest, the new system up there, maybe even some snow in the Cascades. Temperatures tomorrow, a little warmer than today in the plains, and even here in Iowa. So, it's going to be a little bit warmer. Maybe not quite as hot for California, but still 10 to 15 degrees above average. Still above average for Texas and Oklahoma. And then below average, especially for Florida, but up and down the East Coast and also for parts of the Midwest. Those highs look like this. 50s and 60s for the Northeast and New England, 50s and 60s for much of the Great Lakes, 70s for the Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, 80s Central Plains, 90s Texas, 80s Southeast, and then not as hot for the Central California areas, mid-90s instead of 100. So that is nicer. 48 hours of rainfall looks like this. Sorry, my throat is really sore. Anyway, so Florida, the big winner, or the biggest loser, I guess you could say on this, because this is quite a bit of rain, 2 inches plus for much of Florida. And when you get into the yellows and the browns there, from say Fort Myers down to the southern tip of the peninsula, you're talking 4 inches of rain, maybe more for some. And then same up, Daytona Beach. Well, not quite that far north. 4 inches of rain possible. A little bit of rain in the northwest as well. Surface on Wednesday. Here comes Milton. Milton expected to make landfall now. It's, the timing's a little slower than it has been the last couple days. We're looking at Wednesday afternoon at the very earliest, probably Wednesday night now. But again, we'll have those tornadoes spinning up with the outer bands and with landfall of Milton itself. Of course, torrential heavy rain, so flooding likely here. And then, of course, don't forget hurricane force winds. It'll probably be around 115 miles an hour when it makes landfall. So just a mess with Milton. I know people are evacuating and waiting for further instructions and boarding up and all of those hurricane preparations that you need to make. I have good news, though. When we get to the GFS, we were talking about the possibility of another system, maybe by the end of the month, and it's starting to look like maybe not. So that's good. All right, where are we going next? Wednesday's highs, very warm, northern plains, 20, 30 degrees above average for the Dakotas into Minnesota. Yikes. 20 degrees above average here in Iowa, all the way down into Nebraska, parts of Kansas. 15 degrees above average for the southern plains. So just very warm here. Cool on the east coast and the southeast, and cool in the northwest. Yeah, a few degrees below average. Highs on Wednesday. So there we go. We got still 70s in the Willamette Valley, but 60s up there in Washington State. A lot of 70s for the interior of the Northwest, even some 80s along the Snake River. 80s as you get on the other side of the Rockies in Montana, into the northern plains. 80s for South Dakota, North Dakota. Keep in mind, highs this time of year should be like 60 something. So, very warm. Mid-80s Nebraska into Kansas, and then we start to see some 90s again, West Texas. Southwest still hot, 103 Phoenix. I'm so sorry. This is October 9th. 80s, though, for the central valleys of California. So getting better here. A lot of 70s southeast into the Midwest, and then New England 60s, even some 50s. All right, here we go. GFS time. And let's go forward in time and see what we come up with here. So we're starting out this morning, and we see lots of heavy rain across Florida through time. This is Tuesday, so this is already tomorrow. And did you see all that rain? Let me go back here. I have to look around my camera. So look at all that rain today, tonight, tomorrow. A little bit of break in the action, and then here comes Hurricane Milton. This is Wednesday night, right here, about sunset. And so right over Tampa, in Tampa Bay, with very heavy rainfall, mainly to the north. Of course, there'll be tornado risk with all this. Very, 115 mile an hour winds likely. And it won't weaken a whole lot as it moves across Florida, because it's not a big strip of land. So it'll weaken some over land, but it won't be above land it won't be on land that long. And so by Thursday morning, afternoon, it's back into the Atlantic and spreading some heavy rain into South Carolina, maybe some wind along the coast. But then it moves out harmlessly, no big deal. Now, what we're going to watch is a series of cold shots or cool shots for the Great Lakes into the East Coast. And so, our big piece of energy moving down the Rockies all the way into West Texas is kind of backing off from that scenario. It's starting to look like 2 or 3 cool shots for the Great Lakes into the Northeast. Looks like it's going to be our pattern shift as we get further into October. So this gets us into Sunday. This is, Saturday night, the 13th. And a cold front moving into North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And we see that 540 line again, the demarcation of rain snow. So that's just an indication of how cool the air is. So the cold air making it into the northern, upper Midwest, into the Great Lakes. This gets us into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, the coldest air moving into, even Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and cooling off here, certainly, but the coldest air will be around the Great Lakes. And so that'll, help change our pattern. Things will be cooling off quite a bit. Great Lakes and the East Coast. You see this 540 line dipping all the way into Virginia now. So it would be quite a bit cooler for the Northeast, even some snow showers here for New York State. This is Tuesday the 15th. Well, Wednesday at midnight almost. So Tuesday the 15th, snow showers for New York and Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine on the light side, but cooler temperatures. Here's that piece of energy for the Rockies. It doesn't look super strong, but it's there. And then that translates into a cold front for the plains with some cool air behind it. We'll see if the cold air will try to catch up with the front. And the front moves through parts of the Midwest and the 540 line dipping into Minnesota, North Dakota, into Wisconsin. And then a low forms here and moves into Canada with snow on the backside. So that gives you an idea as we get towards the middle of the month, the third week of October. Things are changing. And are you making a liar out of me? Looks like maybe another tornado, not tornado, hurricane, possible around Miami, moving into the 17th, 18th time frame. So we'll have to see how that goes. Let's see here. It's jumping around on me again. That's my fault for not being careful. So here we go. 17th. Yep. Right over Miami right there for the 17th, Thursday the 17th and Friday the 18th. So we'll watch that. We don't need another hurricane for Florida. All right. Looking towards the weekend. Here, let's check out the temperatures at least. The heat continues for the Central Plains, Southern Plains, into the Midwest with temperatures 20 plus degrees above average. Then, the rest of the West still above average, 10, 15 degrees above average. California, a little pocket below average. I'm not sure what that's about. Where we're seeing the rain for Florida, it's a little bit below average here. And also for the upper Midwest. And those highs on Saturday, we got 60s in North Dakota and Minnesota and northern Wisconsin into Michigan. Very nice. But 90s for Texas, 102 for Phoenix. 70s for the southeast, parts of the southeast into the mid-Atlantic through the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. And then 60s once you get way up there, northern New York into Vermont, New Hampshire. Sunday, a little bit cooler. Did you see that? See that dipping down a little bit. So Sunday's temperatures, I don't know why I put the temperatures here on the anomalies. Did I put anomalies on the temperatures? No. All right. Sunday's temperatures. So Saturday, Sunday, a little bit cooler in the northern plains and the northeast and pretty much everywhere. You see that heat even in the desert southwest getting shunted a little bit south. So getting a little bit more pleasant on Saturday. And then as we get into the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, that's when we start to see more dramatic changes in our forecast, but not really showing up yet on the 6 to 10 day. So the 12th through the 16th is still hot or above average for most of the country and still dry for most of the country. All right, Milton is our biggest concern, and we have 2 more days to watch it before it makes landfall in Florida. So, of course, we'll have the latest for you as we go. So we'll see you here tomorrow, right here on the Weather Mic. Thanks for tuning in.